Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the first part of our urban rodent control series in conjunction with the Gulf South Vector. Before we get started, let's go over a few webinar rules. Please, everyone, mute your line. Use the chat box to ask questions. And for any additional questions not answered during the webinar, you can email them to us at education@nola.gov. And we will be posting this webinar to our YouTube channel. Today's topic is rodent anatomy and biology. The first step in urban rodent control is to understand the basics of rodent anatomy and biology. Today we have two dynamic speakers. Timmy Madeir began working in the field of urban rodent control for 20 plus years. In college, he drove fog trucks at night in his hometown of LaPlace, Louisiana. In 2008, he began working at the City of New Orleans Mosquito, Rodent, and Termite Control Board as a general pest control specialist and is now working as a special projects coordinator. His primary focus is on commensal rodents and urban rodent control. Claudia Regal earned her degrees from Purdue University, the University of Georgia, and obtained a PhD from the University of Florida. In 2004, she became principal research entomologist for the City of New Orleans Mosquito and Termite Control Board. In 2006, she became assistant director, and in 2010, she was promoted to director of the department. And now Timmy and Claudia.
Thank you, Astacia. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So we are the City of New Orleans Mosquito and Termite Control Board. We've been around for a very long time. So just for folks that have not seen our webinar, so we do rodent abatement for City of New Orleans, mosquito control as well for all of New Orleans. But we also have a big termite program, as well as doing pest management in city buildings. So our mosquito control section was started in 1964, but the rodent part of it goes back many, many, many decades. So what do we do here at the City of New Orleans? We do lots of things for the industry as well as the public. We also host different kinds of academies. If you're interested, this coming week is a Mosquito Academy, but we have a Rodent Academy coming up in June, which we'll talk about at the very end. We also participate in projects, and we also create lots of content. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end. So the way we're going to start really is about how absolutely dynamic and, advanced these animals are. So we keep a few, rodents in our building here as the ambassadors, as we are at different community functions, or we have professionals here as well. And so you can see that this one just simply, jumped up, grabbed onto the screen, and was trying to figure out how to get out. And actually, we were pretty close in that it already had chewed through that screen mesh and was already out and about on top of that particular tank. But you can see how adept, how agile, they use all their senses. And the reason why, too, we're showing this is if you are going to plan on controlling rodents, you absolutely have to understand their biology and, really understand all their different senses from touch and also their biology with teeth. And we're going to talk about that. So let's go really back to the very beginning. And what the term rodent, where it originates from, is from Latin, for the verb rodere, right, which means to gnaw. And rodentia is an order of mammals. So they're characterized by two continuously growing teeth. In their, you can note, with their incisors, they have an open root, and so they're upper and lower. And there's going to be another characteristic that we're going to talk about in a minute. So we're going to show you that. But what's really interesting is that about 40% of mammals belong to rodents. And so they live in almost every type of habitat, found on all continents except for Antarctica. They're really quite amazing animals, and they've been around for millions of years. So for the purposes of today's presentation, we really are talking about the commensal species of rodents. So we're talking about the house mouse, the Norway rat, and the roof rat. So these are commensal because they're sharing one's table, right? So we provide everything that they would need, from food to harborage to water, they're unbelievably adept at exploiting our resources. So everything they need, we provide. I think if you're working in any particular area of the country, you really do need to understand what species you have in your particular area, right? So we talk about this with insect identification and pest management all the time. If you say, I found ants at a particular building, well, what does that mean? Is it a rover ant? Is it a pavement ant? Is it a red-imported fire ant? You know, you're going to deal with them all in very different ways. This just happens to be a screenshot from 2016 from a collaborative project with Dr. Mike Blum. At the time, he was at Tulane University. He's at University of Tennessee now. And he had a big project with graduate students and really trying to understand disturbed environments. But the plan was to use Norway rats as the indicator species. But that project morphed like it always does. And you can see the areas in yellow. These are very large tracts of New Orleans. And so very intensive trapping was done throughout New Orleans. So we had a really good idea of what species are found. And so we're really looking at predominantly the Norway rat, which you can see is Norway rat, roof rat, and then we found a couple little hispid cotton rats in our more sort of rural marshy areas. So that was that. And of course, we also had the house mouse, but it's not designated here. So hopefully you're at least able to recognize, and maybe there is a possibility with a collaboration with a university or a project to do some trapping in your area if you don't know. What we're going to do today is really focus in on all of these animals, but we are going to be talking about the house mouse and the Norway rat and all of those commensals. But I want you to remember that the house mouse is the #1 rodent pest. They are everywhere. We ship them in boxes. We move them in stuff, right? So they really have an ability of getting around. They're incredibly widespread. And here's 2 photographs, I think pretty great, showing those characteristic features of a Norway rat and a roof rat. So let's talk about the Norway. So look at the top. Their muzzle is a little bit more blunt than that lower roof rat. You can see the ears, how different they are. So they're a little bit smaller, a little bit larger in stature, not by much, but some. And you can look at the tail. The tail is not going to be as long as the length of the body. You're going to find these. We're going to talk about their habitat here in a little bit, but you're going to find those usually down in the ground with those burrows. So it doesn't mean that they can't go up on those top floors. That roof rat, look at that tail. That is the characteristic feature. So that tail is longer than the length of the body. But look at those ears, right? Very large ears, a little bit more pointy muzzle. I really don't want you to use color as an indicator for species, because we have seen Norway rats that are very, very dark and very, very blonde. So make sure that you're really looking at those characteristic features. Now, we get this all the time. Oh, I have mice. I saw all these little mice, but actually they were juvenile rats. And so you have to make sure that you're understanding how to tell the difference between both, right? So that young rat is always going to be bigger, especially those hind feet are going to be bigger than that house mouse. So this comes out of a book, and it's very important. There's lots of great books out there. We may be referencing them in the presentation. So I would really encourage you to go and look up those primary references. Super important are those teeth. And we're talking about biology here. Again, sort of go back to my original comment is we have to think about control. So why do we care about their teeth, right? Well, first, they grow continuously. The second is that the enamel of a rat's teeth is stronger than copper or aluminum. So when you're selecting pest-proofing materials, we usually go with stainless steel or some other very hard material. So that's a very interesting photo at the bottom. And it's a very old one. It's almost 20 years from after Hurricane Katrina in a parish that's a little bit south of New Orleans. And so these were some of our colleagues from CDC who were doing some inspections down there. And what they noticed was there was a soda machine that every single can had been gnawed through in order to get the liquid, and it was the rats getting in to all of that soda. So make sure you're using very hard material for selection of pest proofing. The other thing you can do is you can also look at the measurement, right? So here's a great example. So this was in a candy, like a candy machine that we had, and the mice had popped the cork in the back of the machine, and they were just going in and out of the machine. Actually, they were going into the candy machine, out to the garbage can, and then back into their nest wherever it was in the building. But you can see how they were gnawing on the chocolate. So I think that's a pretty good close-up picture. You should always have a little ruler with you, because you might not see the animal, but you're going to be looking at all the different signs and clues that they're leaving behind. Here's just another example too, and this is actually taken by Timmy. He's going to be talking here in a few minutes, but you're looking for those incisor marks, right? So, and these are avocados out in the West Coast. So you might pick this up and say, what is going on here, right? But this happened to be roof rats. And again, you're looking for those gnaw marks to get clue into what it might be feeding, what is feeding on here. This is another really interesting situation. And again, look at those gnaw marks. And so you're really looking at about 4 millimeters for rats. And this is what a plastic garbage can. This is outside of a building. And we're like trying to figure out what's going on here, because you're looking at the direction of where the chew marks, right, are. And when you're doing rodent control, I think we're really almost like forensic scientists trying to figure out what is going on at that scene, right? It's almost like a crime scene of like, what are the clues that are being left behind? So the first thing we looked at is like, wait a second, what's the direction of where these gnaw marks are? We knew that it was around 4 millimeters, so we knew it was rats. And so when we looked at the door, which is that top right picture, you can see those scratch marks that are on there. Those are rats that have been pushing in into that garbage can, getting inside. And so they chewed from the inside out. And so that's really what put 2 and 2 together. They were getting the trash that was being left overnight in these bins. And then they just started utilizing these openings to get in and out. I think many of us have heard about spray foam. So it's really great for insulating attics often, but there are some issues when it comes to pests, not only for termites, because you cannot see what is happening, but it's just really an ideal situation for rodents. In this particular one, you can see that there's actually a station there, but the rodents were behind. There's basically a whole little colony behind the foam. And so there are different types of openings. I don't know if my arrow can actually show it, but let's say you see a pipe going down the middle with the station. To the left and to the right, there are openings and rub marks. So they are utilizing that space all behind, and it is hidden. So spray foam is not the right type of material. They have no problems going through it. And this is another example of spray foam. And I'm saying this because, and we're talking about it because this is a very common thing to see. And when we have one of our follow-up webinars, we're going to be talking about pest proofing. And so we're going to be going more in depth about this. But as you can see here, these are plumbing, these are conduit that is going into a metal building. And the rats just chewed right through this material, just like butter. And we're accessing the facility. So let's really stick with nice, strong materials. So there's another thing that characterizes rodents from other animals, and it's going to be this diastema. So this is the space in between. You can see the incisors. I'm looking at the top photograph. You can see the incisors, and then there's some molars, and there's a gap in between, and that's called the diastema. And so it creates that gap. And so the incisors, so I guess a question we get all the time is, if rodents don't chew on something, is their teeth going to grow out of their heads, right? That's a pretty common question, actually. So the answer is no. Of course, they will chew on things and it will help wear down their teeth, but the anatomy of their teeth is very important in keeping it sharp. So for example here, so with your incisors, I'm looking at the second picture, I guess the second to the top picture, you can see the enamel. The enamel is very hard on the inside, with the dentin being a little bit softer on the inside. And now I'm looking at the picture below that with the upper incisor and low incisor, and you can see that the very first diagram, the bottom comes below the top. And so it keeps wearing it down and it keeps those teeth sharp, leaving that edge. Very, very important. Oh, and there's the arrow. All right, so let's talk a little bit. We're going to shift a little bit and we're going to talk about their skeleton and their ability to squeeze through holes. So another common question we get is, can rats and mice, they only have cartilage. They don't have any bones. They can squeeze through anything. Well, that's not true. They do have a skeleton. And if they can get that skull through that hole, the rest of the body, they're going to shimmy in, squeeze, shimmy under, squeeze through. They're going to make it through. So again, we think about pest proofing and control. It's that size of a quarter for a rat and a dime for a mouse, and even a number 2 pencil, which I'll show here in a minute. So if you have a number 2 pencil and it can go, that pencil can go under a door, that mouse potentially can go under that door. So we're talking really small holes. And this is what I was talking about here. So if that skull can move through those holes or through the holes of those openings, the rest of the body is potentially going to be able to shimmy through. So we really are talking very small sizes. And one of the things we do is we try to carry the 35 cents number 2 pencil, because when you tell somebody, it's a quarter of an inch, what does that really mean, right? So, but everyone knows what a quarter looks and feels like, as well as a dime, and of course, a number 2 pencil. So very important. It's just an easier way for people to relate. Now, this is where it gets really super fun, right? So these animals have a tremendous sense of touch. And these are 2 photographs where you can see the vibrissae. So these are whiskers. And so I have a cat, her name is Sprinkles, okay? And yes, she's a rat killer, but she doesn't control populations of rats. But a lot of times she'll sit on my lap and I'll play with her whiskers, right? So it's kind of the same concept here. You can see those whiskers around the muzzle, but there are different kinds of guard hairs along the top of the head, along the body as well. And so those are very important. Those whiskers, those vibrissae around that muzzle, they can move around independently. They have a nerve at the bottom. And what they do is they stretch out as these animals are moving, almost, touching the areas before its actual body touches those particular areas. So those whiskers, those vibrissae, are sending communication information about the environment back to its brain. And so I love this picture, and you can really see how adept and agile they are. Look at those vibrissae in the front. But what it also shows you are all those guard hairs along the top of that animal. So really, gaining a lot of information from that environment. They will, for example, if they're, along a corner or along a wall, those vibrissae, those are all stretched out, sending information back to the animal of where they are and what's going on. Now, these animals are pretty amazing. You just saw an animal jump here in a photograph. This is one of Timmy's photographs over on an overpass on a highway. So pretty amazing, right? You can try to figure out what this animal is going to be doing here. It's a roof rat. And what it did was, when he got out to take this photo, it jumped, and you can see the photograph. And it basically went down almost 20 feet, jumped, and it ran into the bushes to wherever it was going. So pretty amazing animals. This is a photograph, again, if we want to talk about biology and its ability to, deal with the environment and understand it. These animals can climb up and down conduit. They can climb up and down walls. And we have some really exciting videos for you guys in the pest proofing webinar of these animals just climbing up walls. But what's neat here is, this animal it's a roof rat, and it's really wrapping itself around this conduit, using that tail for balance. You can see how its digits, right? The little toes and fingers are really stretched out and wrapping around the conduit, holding on. Its body is really flattened down. This is all in pitch black, right? So it's moving up and down this conduit like with absolutely no problem. So, these animals, again, we talked about it already. They use these vibrissae on their head, as well as their guard hairs, to really orient this animal. Just showed you an example of the tail. They do not have prehensile tails, all right? So they use it for a variety of reasons, for balance, also temperature regulation, that kind of stuff. But they use that tail for balance. There are those nerves at the base of those hairs, right? Just sending a lot of information to that animal. And they will run along the grassy walls, again, continuing to get information. Now, what's really interesting, and you can use this to your advantage, especially if you're trapping, and even putting out bait stations, but let's say you're trapping. These animals it becomes almost a habit through muscle memory. They may have a particular garbage can that they're using in a park, for example, to go get their food. So they'll be in their nest. They use the same runway. Maybe there's some sort of side surface that they're sort of, following, but sometimes they're in the middle of wherever it may be in a park and go to their garbage can for food. So there's a lot of muscle memory that happens to do that. So that would be an ideal place that you may want to put some snap traps sort of perpendicular, right, to that runway, because that animal probably is not thinking about it too much. It's just going back and forth, and you may be able to increase your success of trapping. So sort of that pre-programmed, right, movement through their territory. So let's think about hearing as well. And so they have a very keen sense of hearing. And so they can hear in the ultrasound range. And here it's like 280,000, hertz, seeing essentially of where they can hear. Now, we don't know of any ultrasound devices that have been scientifically proven, right, to control rodents in a particular area. And in fact, we see this all the time. We'll go into a particular building and there's these things that are plugged in to try to keep these animals out. Well, it doesn't. And so if it does, it's for an extraordinarily short period of time. They acclimate to it and move on. And a lot of times we actually see, if it's got cockroaches in that building, we might actually see German cockroaches in that unit as well. So it's much like if you put an owl out for a particular animal to like scare them away. Maybe it does that for 5 minutes, but they figure it out. It's not moving. There's zero impact on that. Now, there's lots of cool papers out there on vocalizations. So if you have a pet rat, I don't know if anyone does, or if you've been even in a building that's infested with rodents, you can be very quiet and you'll often hear, in some cases, what we can hear, right? That chirping, that vocalization. We know for sure from the literature that in the little juvenile rats, the little pups, they actually can emit distress calls. And we know that female laboratory mice and their pheromones can cause males as well to vocalize. And what is super cool is that male mice can sing. And so what does that mean? These are recognizable, distinct categories of sounds. I think nobody's going to beat the birds, okay? But they do have these patterns that are recognizable. So really super cool. So these are the pheromones that I was talking about. And so pheromones are chemical substances produced and released into the environment by an animal, especially a mammal or an insect, affecting the behavior, physiology of others of its species. So when you look at a photograph like this, we've talked a lot about biology already, and it's going to really pull in a lot about what we have been talking about. So all those little black specks, those are droppings. And so when you see something like this, you've got two sides, two walls, and lots of droppings everywhere, urine marks on there. When we run into this, we say, okay, this is a communication center, right? This is the main switchboard where animals are going in, they're dropping, they're very likely urinating, and they're talking to each other by pheromones. What might be in there? Maybe there's a female in estrus. There's, maybe food. Who knows what they're talking about and communicating about? But clearly, there's a lot going on in that particular area, in that population of rodents. Now, I'm going to show you a video And I'm sure maybe some of you have already seen this video that's out there, but I will tell you, if you've not, this is going to be the coolest video you've ever seen in your life. So get prepared. Okay. We love giving this presentation in front of people to see the amazing reaction, right? So I can't see all of you, but I'm going to imagine all of you clapping and say this is up for an Oscar. And so here it is. Holy cow, right? What just happened there? So you had intentional marking of a corner, right? So that rodent, that Norway rat female, was marking her turf in that space. So we're going to watch that one more time because honestly, amazing. There it is. You could see it. So this is the importance of game cameras. So now we know, right? That female is marking her turf for some reason. It might be like, hey, this is mine, or I am marking it here to remember to go back, whatever it may be. All right, so here's another one. And again, game cameras are your friend because it catches all these behaviors, right? To try to figure it out. And so we talk about, yep, it drops a couple of packages. Okay. And so again, those packages are going to have, of droppings are going to have pheromones in it, but they're also going to have pathogens. You should assume that these animals are carrying different types of pathogens. There's enough work that's been done throughout the country and internationally for you to know that you should be wearing PPE if you are in an area where you are seeing rodent droppings or there are rodents. Okay, so not only from the urine, but also from the dropping. So pretty cool. We're going to watch that one more time. But use those game cameras. They're not very expensive. Actually, you can see this is a video from 2016, but it's super relevant to what we're doing. So with that, we're going to go ahead and swap out. Timmy is going to start talking about the house mouse, the Norway rat, and the roof rat. Timmy, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get into the specifics of each animal. So the house mouse, this is our #1 rodent pest around the world. They are world conquerors. They originally are from Central Asia, I think the Indian steppe area, these high plains with a lot of grasses and wheats. So they grew up eating small insects and grains that fell on the ground and different seeds and such until they met us. And they really expanded themselves as omnivores when they met humans and realized we mean food, we mean shelter, we mean protection from a lot of predators. So they started hitchhiking with us. And now the most successful mammal on earth currently is us. The second most successful mammal on earth is the house mouse. And that's something to be said on every continent except Antarctica. And I'm willing to bet that at one point or so, at least now in Antarctica, with researchers there and all the shipments that come in and all the boats that come in, they at least had one mouse show up, very lonely house mouse sitting there going, how did I get here? That doesn't mean they're going to have an established population, just they've made it there because these guys are hitchhikers. So identification, they're small, they're very easy to identify. House mouse versus deer mouse would probably be the most common misidentification. And thankfully, if we're in South Louisiana, we don't have deer mice. If you're in most other parts of America, though, or throughout the world, you could run into Paramiscus or one of the other mouse species. Generally, though, you're going to look at these guys and see on a deer mouse, they look like teddy bears, almost like hamsters. They're so cute for mice. But these guys, this lightish gray to brown color, coloration can vary slightly. As far as size goes, about 15 to 30 grams. So they're small little animals. They've got those big ears that stick up to, very nice, robust ears on them. Just very cool animals. If you want to know an easy way to tell these guys apart from Paramiscus or any native mouse, here's the really simple way. Look at the tail. If you have a native rodent, at least in the Americas, our native rodents are going to have dark on top and light on the bottom of the tail, where it's actually a color separation, where the top of the tail is black or gray and the bottom is pale white to tan. Also, look at the amount of hair. They're going to have semi-naked tails, which means there's going to be very light fur, scant fur on the tail. Native rodents are going to have much hairier tails. So they're reproducing machines. We're going to notice this common theme when it comes to our rodents, be it Norway rat, roof rat, or house mouse. They're breeding machines. Now, these numbers are all set for in a perfect world, in a vacuum, in a situation where they don't have to deal with us trying to control them, in a situation where they don't have to deal with snakes and birds of prey trying to feed on them. So, uh, they can produce a lot of, in a perfect situation, they can produce a lot of offspring very quickly, and numbers can get out of hand. I'm sure we've all been in an experience or in a situation where we've experienced just an explosion of mice, where you were working somewhere and perhaps you might be catching one or two every so often, and then all of a sudden they're everywhere. Well, that's because you were catching the young dumb ones. You were catching the non-breeders, and the breeders were out there doing what mice do. They were breeding. So what do mice do? They hoard. They love to hoard food in places. They're always thinking of the future. They're always thinking ahead, and they're always marking. Claudia talked about this a lot, using the pheromone markers. Well, they like to get under furniture, be it sofas. They will live under sofas. They will live inside of sofas. It's however they can get closest to their food and water, they want to stay. And mice have very small home ranges and very small territories. You're looking at about 10 to 30 feet. So if you're finding mouse droppings in large amounts in an area, you're very close to where they're living at. If you're finding one or two, you're in their home range. Their territory, though, you're going to find large amounts of droppings, lots of urine, and over time, the urine will build little piles called urine pillars, which you can actually see on the ground. And in this picture, we can see the animal had been hoarding dog food, and this was probably what was sustaining these animals. And I don't think one animal made all of those droppings. That was an entire family of mice. This was under a dresser, or, I'm sorry, under a bureau in someone's living room. Oh, and just a note, when we come across things like this, we need to clean it up properly and be aware. Have our N95 dust mask on, have your gloves on, get your 10-to-1 bleach solution, spray it down first before you start to clean up. You do not want to get these particles of droppings and those urine particles up in the air and breathe that in. That's where the pathogens are. We don't want that. So behavior varies. A mouse can behave one way in one room, and in the next room over, behavior can be 9-day difference. That's how adaptable they are. From building to building, it will change rapidly. And this is something where we have to take into account when we're doing control, that we can't get into that frame of mind where I've done mouse jobs my whole life. This is going to be just like the last mouse job. No, they're each need to be taken individually as its own job and looked at with its own problems, because they're going to find a way to exploit niches in different ways depending on what situation they're in. So when I go on a job, if I'm going to a box store or a grocery store, the first place I like to look, the compressors. I go to the frozen food section. I go to the bakeries. I go to the meat section, because all those refrigerators have compressors on them, which they stay warm all the time, and generally they cause moisture issues where you'll get condensation on some of these compressors, or there'll be a drip pan underneath. So there's water, there's warmth. It's very quiet in there, aside from the hum of the motor, and there's food really close by. Well, you can apply these same concepts to homes when you're doing your home inspections, because mice love to nest inside of our appliances. These pictures, one is a refrigerator on the right, and on the left, I believe that's the back of a hot water heater, or the base of a hot water heater container. But when we look close at this, and when we're dealing with these rodents, we need to be detectives. We need to look for these tiny clues the tiny animals are leaving behind. Let's start with our picture on the left. The arrow there is pointing to, we can see the gnaw marks where the animal chewed on there, but also that black smudge there is sebum. And it leads to that perfect little hole where the mouse has spread apart that insulation to get in there and have a nice, quiet, warm nest. And then we look at the picture on the right, and that's the back of a refrigerator, just a standard refrigerator. In fact, when we're doing office buildings, so many people have mini fridges now. They get overlooked a lot. And a lot of times it's exactly where the animals are nesting. You'll see this picture should go in a textbook, because you'll see it that often when you're doing homes and doing offices, where they've chewed a little bit of cardboard. Oh, wait, let me go back. They've chewed a little bit of cardboard, and they're able to access in there. And there's a drip pan in there, and there's a beautiful rub mark. And that's also that staining there, you see that's urine. So that's a scent mark as well. So, these animals are showing us where we need to focus our control at. We need to put traps behind that fridge. It might be a pain in the butt pulling the fridge out, but if you want to get control, you have to bring your devices to these animals. So rodents are omnivores, mice are no exception. And I included this picture just to show how weird and diverse their diets can be at times, even for mice. They will feed on small birds. I've seen mice eating sparrows in an attic and eating the eggs out the nest numerous times now. And as far as bait stations go, these animals will drag in anything and everything to eat when either the bait has run out, or sometimes they'll drag in food items when there's still plenty of fresh bait around. And just because they don't want to eat bait, they're not going in the station for the bait. They're going in the station because it's dark and they want shelter and protection from predators. So they'll drag their dinner in with them. Just love that picture because you can see the rodenticide package that's empty in there, and you can see the blood on it because it was an anticoagulant. So we probably killed a few rodents, and then others moved in and drug these other food sources in. So talking about mice and hoarding, let's watch a video. So here's my little girl. She was living in my walls a few years ago of my house, and I was able to film her doing different behaviors. And watch, she grabs the popcorn and she just takes off with it and carries it away with her. So that's a mistake we make in our industry when we're trying to solve rodent issues a lot. We make the assumption that the animals feed on site where they grab their food from, when actually it's quite the opposite. A lot of times they grab that food and they take off with it and bring it somewhere totally different to eat. There are exceptions to the rule. I notice generally when they're younger and pups tend to sit and eat in the same spot, but the adults have figured out that is dangerous and they take off with the food. You'll see this a lot with roof rats where they'll break off a piece of rodenticide from a station and then bring it to the top of the bait station and sit on top of the station and eat the poison. It's very weird. You think they'd stay in the box where they felt safer. Oh, and another thing that gets overlooked so often, everyone I'm guessing is extremely grateful that this is a photo and not a video, because this mouse is eating, that's a horse dropping. So mice and rats both will eat feces, be it horse feces, be it rat or other rat feces, or even their own. They will eat dog feces. They will eat human feces. They're totally opportunistic. Things like this, though, that horse apple there, if you would, it has oats in it. It has undigested bits of food in it that the mice can get a hold of and eat and get nutrition from. The same thing really applies for dog food. They get a lot of protein from eating dog food. So if we have pets in our yard, if we have a dog that goes in the yard, that's a great reason to pick up the dog poop, not just because you don't want to step in dog poop, but also because we don't want to feed the neighborhood animals or the neighborhood rodents our animal droppings. If by some chance you happen to have livestock nearby, make sure that their droppings are properly cleaned often. That way you're not leaving a feeding opportunity for these animals. So on to our next rodent. We're going to be looking at the Norway rat. And a picture says 1,000 words. Well, this one's writing us a novel. This tells us a lot. So what do we know about rodents so far? We've learned they're nocturnal, right? So if we're looking closer, we're being keen observers. The first thing we should observe is that's daylight in the background. This animal is out during the day. Will rats and mice come out during the day? Of course they will. But generally, there's very specific reasons why they're coming out during the day. They would rather travel at night. They feel safer. Actually, they feel safest at dusk and dawn. But when it's not full bright daylight is when it's really unusual to see them generally. So why would we see these animals during the day? They could be sick. They could be dying from rodenticide poisoning. Some of the rodenticides make the animals act abnormally. It could be a predator came and scared them out of his burrow. It could be there was construction in the area and caused the burrow to collapse on them and cause them to come out. Or this is the worst case scenario. It could be that the population of rodents in this area is so large that they have to come out during the day to forage, because at night there are so many animals around, there's just not enough food available. And that is really the worst case, because that means you have a lot of rodents around if they're pushing adults out during the day to feed. Another reason, sometimes it's our fault, because these animals are extremely clever and they'll figure out if we quit putting our trash out in the morning and start putting our trash out at noon instead, They'll adapt their schedule to feed when the trash is available, to feed when the food is available. Our New Orleans rats on Bourbon Street, they don't come out at dusk. In fact, they usually don't come out in large numbers till about 2 or 3 in the morning when the area is quieted down and all the drinking and partying has stopped. Most of the garbage is out. These animals know that's the time to be active. Between 2 and 5 in the morning, that is when you see the most activity in these areas where there's always something going on. That's not to be said that you won't see a rat at any other time, but you'll see the most at those times. So our Norway rat, where are they from originally? Northern Mongolia, and they likely spread around the world using the Silk Road, which, just like the mice, all you're going to notice a common theme with our commensal rodents as well. They're all really good at hitchhiking, and the commensal means sharing the table with us. So yeah, these animals learn to. We mean safety. We mean food. We mean a free ride. So they've traveled the world with us as well. Once again, found on every continent except Antarctica, numerous islands, because a lot of people think that only the roof rats traveled the boats around the world, which is silly because, of course, these animals traveled right alongside them on the boats. They were able to get to any place that the other animals were able to get to as well. And when they show up in a place, they tend to establish quickly. They're a larger rat. In fact, let's get into physicality of them. But they're much larger than roof rats. For us, usually our average weight for a Norway rat, I would say, would be about 12 to 14 ounces. If we get a pound, we throw a party, which maybe once a year we'll catch a 1 pound rat. But generally, that's 12 to 14 ounces is pretty good around the world. And in fact, a colleague and I were having a discussion this week, and he told me someone told him that they were catching 2 pound rats and 2 pound 9 ounce rats. And I said, I don't know if I really believe that. I want to see the animal on a scale and see it weighed. And just showing me forced perspective photos isn't going to make me believe that they get that big. In my office, I have an animal in a cage, a Norway rat that I've raised from a pup that I've been feeding basically a little bit of everything I eat every day. And it weighs almost 2 pounds. And that's only because this animal is force fed. And this animal, well, not force fed, but this animal was kept in a cage and not able to go out and exercise and didn't have the nice, healthy diet. It only got it was only fed what I gave it. But yeah, it couldn't function in the wild at that weight. So it's been around in the Americas since 1775, found in all 50 states now, the Norway rat. And I've had people argue with me about this time and time again. They show up, they're hitchhikers. The number one place, if you want to find a Norway rat in your town and you think they don't have Norway rats, go find your landfill. Landfills and Norway rats go hand in hand. So talk about the weight already, colorization on them. They come in red to brown, really. When I'm really lucky, which is not too often, I used to say about once a year. Now it's about averaging about once every 3 years. I'll catch a jet black one. It is very rare, at least here in New Orleans. Maybe in other parts of the world, you guys find them more often, but not here. So as far as shape goes, these are bulldozer rats. They've got a blunt nose, big bulky shoulders for a rat, big bulky body in general. The ears are small, close set. They're further back on the head than a roof rat's ears. When you see the roof rat's ears, they're kind of more pointed forward, while the Norway ears are more flipped back. And this makes sense. Their ears also, they can close them, which is really neat that they can actually contract their ears. And they have this ability because when they're burrowing, they don't want to get dirt in the ears. So the ears fold back and place against the head when the animal is burrowing, which is really awesome. And if you want to tell these guys apart from native rodents, the same tip I said for the mice applies to the rats. As far as the hair, the coloration on the tails, not so much. It's not as standard as it is on mice, but the hairs, they're going to have very little hairs on a Norway rat tail as opposed to any native rodent that you come across. Any native rodent tail that you're going to see is going to be substantially and noticeably hairier than any Norway rat, and for that much, any roof rat tail that you're going to come across. So when we're identifying, you want another easy way to identify, take that tail, pull it forward along the spine to the head. That tail is going to end between the ears and the eyes. Almost consistently. It can end a little further back, but it's never going to go beyond the eyes. So really easy to do, really easy to tell. My one caveat with this is please, please, please make sure the animal's dead before you do this, or else it will bite you. So reproducing machines, as I said earlier, it's going to be a theme with these animals. They are able to have large amounts of pups very quickly. They mature sexually very quickly. This is something really cool. So Nori rats live in colonies. That means you can have extended families in a Nori rat colony where you'll have mom, dad, pups, grandma, uncle, aunts, nephews, the whole shebang. And being a colony, they work for the colony. So mothers will take turns where one will lay down and nurse another rat's pups so that mother can go out and get food and water for the night. And then she'll come back and lay down, and it'll be time for another mother to go up, and she takes her break. It also applies to when they're working on something. Whenever you see a rat hole, if you ever thought that one rat chewed that hole, it's very, very likely that that's not at all what happened. Usually it's a team effort where one rat will go up and chew for a minute, and then another rat will come along behind him and he'll start chewing for a minute. And if you ever wondered how they don't choke on the sawdust, I'm not sure if Claudia mentioned this or not. There's a flap of skin in the back of the neck called this, in the back of the throat, called a dystemia. It's right behind the jaw cavities. And so that flap of skin will come down and close so that when they're chewing, unless they want to swallow something, they're not going to swallow it. Those particles are just going to build in there. So they'll turn and spit it all out. So you'll notice when you see a rat hole, you usually see a pile of whatever material they went through next to it, be it sawdust or bits of whatever. But yeah, it's just, to me, it's awesome that these animals have figured out teamwork. And then also that they're equipped to be able to chew through things without swallowing that stuff. But that's how they get to know their world, by biting things and chewing things. That is what rats do. So Ray said they're ultimate breeders. With that, I want to talk about the picture at the bottom real quick, because what are we looking at a picture of there? What killed this rat? If we're keen observers, which I could have did a better close-up, but it would only be grosser, a rat killed. Well, I don't know if a rat killed this rat. I know it fed on it. A rat fed on this rat. This was cannibalism, where one rat came and fed upon another. We see this a lot. In fact, until recently, until game cameras, what was that now? Wow, I was saying recently, it's been almost 20 years since we started using game cameras now. And we started noticing incidences of cannibalism amongst rats, where rats were either actively killing each other or feeding off dead animals in traps. And sometimes this is about lack of food, like during COVID. This was definitely due to lack of available food. That's why we saw that. Sometimes it's just opportunity. Who knows? This really needs to be looked at closer. But the point of it is, and why I'm harping on it is, even if we eliminate all the natural food sources in the area and all the unnatural food sources and secure all the garbage, they can prey on their competition. They can prey on mice. So it's about eliminating everything. I told you got to even get rid of the cockroaches. We have to eliminate every food source. No one ever thinks of the other rats as a food source. So behavior, they live inside of burrows in the ground. That's generally. Is there exception to this rule? Oh yeah. I've seen them living in ivy on walls with above ground nests. It's almost as if they had above ground colonies or above ground burrow systems in this ivy because it was so thick on the walls. I've seen them live in buildings in different situations too, where they had a big pile of debris somewhere, a big pile of clutter, and they'd made their nests in a box in it. But when we find them outside, it's going to be in burrow systems generally. I've seen them in knotholes in trees too on occasion. But for the most part, burrows. They love to live near water sources. The closer, the better for these animals. They want fresh water. Mice can drink some of the filthiest, most stagnant, nasty water and be happy with it. In fact, mice are, I forgot to mention this, and I know we've moved on to Norway's, but this is worth mentioning. House mice can survive for up to 3 months just with the moisture in their diet, without free-flowing water. That is amazing. Nori rats, they can't do that. And same thing with roof rats. These animals need water every day in order to survive. They can only go like 3 days without water before they're going to collapse and die. So that is something to use to your advantage. You know they're going to be in these areas. You know they want water sources, especially now with summer coming here. I know we're about to get a lot of calls from rats chewing water lines and ceilings to get to fresh water. So yeah, rats really prefer clean water. They will drink nasty water rather than die of dehydration, but they're going for the clean water more than anything. Uh, they don't mind being crowded together. That's what one of the things that leads to success for them. They're thigmatic. They're thigmophilic, meaning they love to be pressed together. They love to be in tight spaces. So they don't mind if there's too many rats next to them. That brings them comfort. There's actually vibrissae on them run alongside the body that when compressed actually has been shown that it causes the rat to feel more at ease, to be more relaxed. So, and what's the other reason? They will eat just about anything you can think of. That is something where it comes to mice and rats, where we see this happen a lot, where we'll go to a building or to a home and we'll find the food source. And it's something, sometimes it could be condiment packets or something like that. And the people go, well, I didn't think that was food. And you got to give them a look like, well, you eat it, that makes it food. So anything we can consume is food to a rat, plus a lot of things we can't consume or don't consume is food to a rat. See the animal feces. So peak feeding, usually dusk and dawn, as I said, but that can change based on multiple things, as I discussed earlier as well. Different factors can affect this. About 1 ounce of food a day. So that's a lot of food. That's 1 ounce of food per rat per day is what they want. They can survive off less, but that's what they really want to live happy and healthy. So sanitation is one of the key things. Limiting alternative food sources is one of the key things because an ounce of food a day is a lot of food. And when you're a little small high metabolism animal, it makes sense that you need all these carbs and all this protein. So extremely diverse diets, active hunters, Norway rats too, as well as roof rats. And we don't give them credit for that. We think they're more opportunistic. They're always in the garbage. And yes, that is true. They love a handout. They love the easy path, but they also appreciate having to earn a meal on occasion. So home range versus territory. Home range of an animal is, in fact, these two get reversed most of the time. So home range is the area where they go out and explore and forage every night, and they may or may not come to this area, and it'll even tolerate other rats that aren't from their colony in their home range. So you could go into an alley and see 50 rats, and that doesn't mean that all 50 of those rats all know each other and live in the same colony, or that they're even near where their nest is. This could be the edge of a bunch of colonies where their home ranges mix. And this is how we end up with new rat colonies a lot of times, because these animals will be out in the home range and they'll meet a new girl from a different home range and go start their own colony somewhere. So what we're looking for, though, when we're doing control more than anything, we want to be in the animal's territory. It's where their nest is. It's where the young are. It's going to have the most signs, the most droppings, the most rub marks. It's always going to have a nice constant source of water. That is the first thing a rodent finds when it enters a structure is a water source, because man, that is so key to them that they're going to look for that immediately. So here's some photos showing a great example of how small a Norway rat territory can be, and times where they don't nest in burrows and where they don't use the burrow system. So let's look at our center middle picture here. In this middle photo, we can see all these nice dumpsters here stacked up for all these restaurants, and one's for an apartment complex. So every night, these animals are getting delivered free buffet. Whatever we ate, they'll eat. Then let's look down to the left, and we see that picture, and we have some water on the ground that's spilling out. Probably, I'm calling it water. It's probably dumpster goo that's all over on the ground there. But we see this hole in the hollow block right there. And then when we look on the picture on the right, I got in there and I took a picture, and we can see those black smudges in there. That's not dirt. That's sebum. That's rat wax. That's that oil that they put out. That's pheromone markers. So these animals are eating out the dumpster and then entering through this crack in the concrete. And from there, they can get in this hollow block. And those are little rat condominiums that through there now. So the easiest solution to this is going to be seal that hole up permanently with concrete. And mind you, it's a bit grim because you're going to be there's a good possibility you'll be sealing rats in there. but they're going to have a tough time coming through concrete. But it's right there. And a lot of times you'll go see technicians put bait stations out and they're going to put them every 20 feet around the building when why isn't there a bait station right here next to this dumpster, next to this hole where we know the animals come every day? We know they live in that wall. Here's just a rough drawing of what a burrow system looks like. And this is a classic. This one goes back to like the 50s. I want to say this drawing was by a guy named Sphinx, I think, originally. I'd have to recheck on that. But this is a very old drawing because we've learned now the burrow systems are a lot more complex than this, but this is the standard. You usually get entry, exit, and an escape hole or bolt hole. And the bolt hole, usually they will cover it up with something, be it old leaves. Sometimes it's garbage like paper bags or whatever they can find on the ground. And they make it look like it's an unused hole. So a lot of times you think, oh, this burrow is dead, when really that's the escape route. If you're doing CO2 treatments or carbon monoxide treatments, you definitely need to learn about burrow systems and where all the holes are and learn how to pay attention and find these escape holes. But like I said, now that we're looking closer, we ran some pure black through a burrow system about 2 years ago, and we were able to find out there are multiple chambers to some of these burrow systems, and it's way more extensive than was previously thought. So it's just really nice. Our has any I'm sure we've all seen a situation like this on occasion where the three hole burrow system just doesn't apply. In this picture, just off the top, counting quickly, I can see over 20 burrows in this picture. And most of them are on top of each other, right next to each other. And in a lot of these situations, these burrows are interconnected. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they go off in a total different direction and never hit the others. So it is very tough to tell. And if you are doing burrow treatments, you cannot skip a burrow because you don't know if that's the one that doesn't connect to the others and leads to another chamber you don't know about. So be very meticulous when you're doing this and pay very close attention. Okay, on to our third animal, Rattus, the roof rat. And this is a beautiful picture. We can see that nice long tail hanging down. You see those big ears I was talking about earlier on it. And you see how they're much more forward on the head than on an Norway rat. And those nice, big, wide open eyes. What else? We mentioned this earlier too. What draws your attention more than the rat in the picture? The time of day. It's daytime. So we went over earlier with Norway rats. All the reasons why you could see them out during the day apply to the roof rat. Could be multiple reasons the animal's out. He could be sick. He could have ingested poison. This could just be his feeding schedule when this is when food's available. It could have been that the tree he was nesting in fell down and he needed to find a new place to live. So multiple things can cause these animals to come out during the day, but it is extremely more common to find them out at night. So where are they from originally? The jungles of Southeast Asia. Think Vietnam, Laos area, Cambodia. So they're jungle rats, they're tree rats. So when we know this and we're thinking about the animals and how they see the world, think about what a drop ceiling looks like. It has all those wires running everywhere and pipe chases going here and there. And they feel at home in these areas. They get in there and they don't see a pipe chase or a wire. They see a vine or a tree branch. So it's a really different way of viewing the world that we need to view the world the same way as they are. They are world conquerors as well on all 6 continents, or all 6 out of 7 continents. I don't think they made it to Antarctica just yet. The colorations on them it is straight amazing some days. We've caught blondes, we've caught sables, we've caught jet blacks, and it can vary block to block. Years ago, when we were sampling in Ninth Ward, we noticed a lot of color variation just on one block in certain situations. We had blondes and sables and just standard colorations. The tail identification trick, as far as the hairiness, applies to this animal as well. If you're trying to differentiate between I'd say, rice rat or a wood rat and a roof rat, look at that tail and look how much hair is on it. If it's extremely hairy, extremely furry, it's very likely you have a native rodent. If it's scant, it's more likely a roof rat. So telling roof rats and Norway rats apart, very easy trick. Same way we took that tail on that Norway rat and ran it across the spine and ran it forward, you're going to do it on the roof rat. And this time that tail is going to extend a good 1/2 inch to 2 inches past the nose on the rat. It's not going to end between the eyes. It's going to go beyond that. You can also take the ear, and when you flap the ear over, the ear is going to be able to cover the eye fully. So very easy. And that snout is pointy as opposed to the blunt snout that you see on the Nori rat. They're much sleeker, more graceful, generally slimmer. So it's a pretty easy ID. So total omnivores too, just like our mice and our rats, they'll eat whatever they can get their little teeth on. And they have a real preference, I find, at least in our area, for snails and acorns more than anything for their for their natural food sources. We see a lot of feeding on that, but they're not above eating bird eggs or going catch a bird, or eating cockroaches. They love geckos and lizards too. These are all very high protein food sources for them. Now, this is something we taught for years, that they don't venture. We used to teach they don't venture down to the ground often, except for in extreme situations. Now that we have game cameras and we started looking at it, we see roof rats on the ground all the time. Are they nesting there? Not too often. There is a rare occasion. If there are no Norway rats around, if there are no predators around, they'll nest on the ground, or they'll nest very close. I've seen them nest about 1 foot off the ground in a pile of bricks. I've seen them nest in wood piles stacked against houses too a lot. So, but for the generally, when you come across these guys, they're high up. They're in your attics. They're hiding in high up places and just coming down to forage and drink. Unlike nori rats, it's not a colony. When you deal with roof rats, you're dealing with family units like a pod. You have mom, dad, and the pups for that year. And once the pups hit sexual maturity, mom and dad push them out on their own and they go out and do their thing. That being said, it is not uncommon to come across sites where you come see hundreds, if not thousands, of roof rats living in a little tiny area. If anybody's ever gone out to a chicken farm or pig farm or any type of stable, you'll notice large populations of roof rats. But these animals are not like the nori rats, where the noris are working as a group for that colony. No, usually the roof rats will have very small territories in that situation. And I know in my experience, in stables especially, each family has its own stable. That way they don't have to leave, because every day that animal is brought feed to that one spot. There's usually a water source that's constant in that spot. So they have very, very small territories. So if they go out to explore their home range versus their territory, and they're out exploring that home range and she runs into a different roof rat's pups, she's not going to lay down and let them nurse on her like the nori rat would do. She's going to eat all those babies. She's going to kill them because she sees them as competition for her children. So yes, you can come across large numbers of roof rats, but it's not the same social dynamic that you see in Norway rats. So diet diversity, as I said, they will go out and hunt. They will go for high protein, but for the most part, these guys want fruit more than anything. Fruits and veggies. They're heavy into that for their diet. Be it dates from date palms. They will eat citrus while it's still growing on the tree. Eat tomatoes off your tomato bush. I've seen them. I love this because a lot of people ask me, "Oh, what about using peppers or capsaicin to repel rodents?" I've seen them eat ghost peppers off of ghost pepper plants. That was at our colleague Ed Freitag's house. They ate all the ghost peppers off his pepper bush. So I don't think capsaicin is going to work. There's our date palms. There's one of our little seeds from it on the ground, and we can see the incisor marks. We can see where this animal is chewing. How do we get control in these situations? That's tough, because are they going to come to our snap traps if they love eating dates off of date palms? Are they going to eat our baits in our bait stations? No, but we can take a ladder and a saw and we can climb up there and we can cut down those dates. We get a broom and we can sweep up all the dates off the ground that fell, and we can clean up the area. And that's one less food source. So that's one less chance at them avoiding what we put down and coming to our devices instead. Just takes a little elbow grease and a little extra effort. So feed a cat, feed a bird, feed a dog, feed a rat. Please do not leave your pet food outside unattended. We're not suggesting that you don't feed your pets outside. We're just suggesting that when the animal is done eating, that you pick up the food and bring it somewhere and don't leave the dish outside. A lot of times we're the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and we'll go put a pan of cat food out so that the neighborhood cat can eat out of it. When really, if you wait at night to see what happens, the cats will get pushed away. Those rats will come and push the animals off so that they can feed first. So, in bird feeders and rats, if you want a good laugh, go to YouTube and watch rat versus bird feeder. A lot of people have tried to design a rodent-proof bird feeder, and we still have yet to achieve that as humanity. That's one of humanity's big goals, I think. So let's watch another video. Remember, we're keen observers, right? Now, as keen observers, we should notice something. We have multiple food options here. We have a lot of different seeds. What else do we have in there? We have insects in here as well. We've got some mealworms in there as well. What are they going for? We're going to watch it one more time so everyone can be keen observers. We're going for one specific seed. They're going for sunflower seeds. Those are baby roof rats. They're maybe about 3 weeks old. I'd have to, if I could venture a guess on the age. And at 3 weeks old, they're perfectly, they could get away from mom now and go out on their own, but they're all grabbing sunflower seeds. Take that for what it is, but they're ignoring all the other seed types. So very interesting stuff there. Okay, now on to inspection. So how do we do in an effective rodent inspection? You have to look for the signs. You have to be tedious. You have to be meticulous. Remember I said we're detectives. We're looking for little clues left behind by small animals. So here's our list of clues, and let's get into them. So droppings are first up. For house mouse dropping, if I had to give a description, I tell people, think of a grain of rice, only black or brown. And that's about what a house mouse dropping is in size and shape. It even has the pointed edges. So that's a good analog if you need something in your mind to picture a house mouse dropping. For Norway rat droppings, I would say a raisin or a raisinette is a pretty good example of about the size. That being said, I have seen one almost the size of my pinky. I would not want to meet that rat in an alley at night, or actually, that rat wouldn't want to meet me in an alley at night. But that is an extreme in that situation. And when it comes to roof rats, the droppings are going to be about the same as Norway's, except they tend to be thinner, longer, and have a curved crescent shape to them. But when we're looking at this too, remember, we're keen observers. We're looking at tiny details. So hopefully you have a hand lens handy or some type of magnifying glass. And when we look at these droppings, especially with our rat droppings, more than the house mouse droppings, we're going to see hairs in them. Especially the Norways have a lot of hairs that are droppings. So these are things to look for. That way, you know, you're not looking at the wrong animal dropping and making the wrong diagnosis. So here's some better pictures. There's our grain of rice at the top. Here's a dime for scale. We can see our house mouse droppings. If you notice, a couple of the droppings in here are a bit distended and misshapen. A lot of times that can be due to dehydration issues, or when I had mentioned earlier that house mice can squeeze all that moisture out of their droppings when they're lacking moisture and can't get to a water source. That'll cause these long distended mouse droppings. So here's our roof rat dropping, Rattus rattus. As I said, they're a little longer and think banana-esque if one would. And they have the nice little tips and points. And if we remember, we're keen observers, so we can see one of our droppings has a hair coming out of it. And then for anyone who's really good, notice the second one that's a different color at the top with the hair coming out. See, looking close pays, and there's a nickel for scale for us. Now onto the Norway rat. So we have a quarter for scale on these. It's a little bit of a heftier dropping. And I have an arrow there pointing to the hairs you can see coming out. And you see the hairs aren't in every dropping, but they are noticeable if you have enough of them. Okay, next thing we're going to look for when we're doing our inspections, we're going to look for tracks. So 4 on the front, 5 on the back. That's 4 toes on the front foot of a mouse or a rat, 5 on the back foot of a mouse or a rat. This is key because it's going to be on any test you ever take probably to get your license. But also, this is something we look for. When I get up in a drop ceiling, I'll shine my flashlight and I'll start looking at pipe chases and things like that. And what I'm looking for is tracks. I'm looking for shiny spots because there should be a layer of dust on all that, on all those pipes and everything on that drop ceiling. So if mice or rats have been walking through there, the track should be really easy to pick out. I'll also look on top of air conditioned ductwork where there's a layer of dust, things like that, on other roofing tiles, on the tops of fluorescent lights where there's a layer of dust. You can shine your flashlight and look for these tracks. If you're lucky, there might be sand around the exterior of a building. If it's freshly rained, there could be mud puddles or mud, and that can have tracks. And this can lead you back to where the animal's living at. It can show you the paths they're taking so you know where to put your traps, where to put your bait stations. So there's a good close-up showing you the 4 on the front and the 5 on the back, and that's a house mouse. Isn't it beautiful house mouse too? He's a woolly mouse, so it makes him even cuter. So as I mentioned with the dust, here's a great example. There's a on the left, you'll see a tray. If anyone is from Louisiana or from New Orleans, they'll know that's one of our seafood trays. We serve boiled crawfish and crabs on that. So when crawfish season ended, this restaurant said, we're going to throw our trays in the attic. Now, we're not going to get into whether they washed this or not before the next crawfish season, but this does tell us that they had a lot of rodent activity in this attic. We have tail drags. We've got a lot of paw marks on there. So it's showing us something's going on in this area where these animals are choosing to travel over this thing instead of going around it, instead of going under it. They decided to go over it. So that's showing, pay attention to that area. Something's going on there. And then if we look at the picture on the right, so these are tough. Okay, this takes practice. Those are mouse tracks. They're not nearly as well defined as a rat track. It almost looks like a bunch of little dots. But when you look really close, you can start counting out and seeing where the toes are. But the giveaway, those little scratch marks there amongst all the tracks, those aren't scratch marks at all. Those are tail drags from the mouse. Because mice, they'll run a little ways and then they'll get up on hind legs and put their nose in the air and smell, or put their ears back, put their ears forward and listen, and slowly look around and listen and observe everything before they move on. That way, you know, they're being extra careful so a predator can't snag them from somewhere. But we can be careful and we can notice these smudges and these tracks. And that's a perfect place to put a snap trap. We know this mouse comes here every day. So that's where you put your trap to catch them, or put a station on the end with the entry facing there. So we know the animal is either going to have to go over or through if he wants to get on that path anymore. So when we're dealing with rodents, we always have to remember to look as close as possible, because I'm going to keep saying this: little animals, little evidence. We're detectives, so we got to pay attention to every little detail. So walking by, you see a garbage bag and a garbage can, and we've all seen what happens when someone throws something in and snags the side of a garbage bag a little bit. Well, sometimes that might not be what it is. So I looked over a little bit and I saw that when you look close, when you're a keen observer, there's scratch marks. You can even start counting them out and count out where the toes would be on this animal. And it shows us rats are using this trash can as a food source. And then when you look even closer, there was a rat waiting for us at the bottom of the bag. And when we look right there on the left side, you can see one of the scratch marks where he's using to drag himself, pull himself in and out of this bag of garbage. So our next thing we're going to be looking for, we're going to be looking for gnaw damage. So Claudia spoke at length earlier about the incisors and the fact that they love to gnaw things, and we can measure a mouse, and we can know at 2 millimeters that a mouse did that gnawing, or 4 millimeters we can know that a rat did that gnawing, and that's how they get to know their world. A lot of I think Claudia already brought this up. They're not filing their teeth down when they do that. They're seeing, can I eat this? Or I need to get through this. It's not so much of I need to file my teeth down. The only thing you can file their teeth down is their own teeth. So they can cause fires by chewing things too. They can cause outages of computer networks, because if we look at the picture on the right, that's cat 6. If anyone's familiar, that's a computer line running through a building, where if we look, because we're keen observers, we can see what happened exactly. They came through and they stripped the wire down and they've sheared wires in half. So this building lost its internet due to rodents. Wouldn't that be something where you're in the middle of a webinar like this and all of a sudden everything goes out instantly? And oh man, it has to be bad weather or something. You'd never guess it was rodents. Or worst case, the picture on the left where they're lucky this house didn't burn down, because when you have rats at that level getting electrocuted and chewing on the back of outlets, it can go badly very quickly. In fact, up to 70% of fires of unknown origin are believed to be caused by rodents chewing wires. So that's enough to keep you up at night. So the next sign we're looking for is burrows. So those holes in the ground that they live in. Will roof rats burrow? As I said earlier, rarely. It has to be very perfect situation, but they will do it sometimes. Runways. So they have these runways they travel. If anyone has done rat work long enough, they know exactly what I mean by a runway. It's these paths. And when you get on your hands and knees and you look really close, you can see where they've come and cleared away the grass. They're almost like their own little groundskeeper crews where they'll come out at night and pull away anything in the way so that they can make that run to food, to water, to shelter really quick so a predator can't snatch them up while they're doing it. We need to learn to recognize these runs because it tells us we should put a station there. We should put a trap there. We should move this garbage can, or better yet, we should put a rodent resistant trash can there and put a bait station underneath it. Use it to your advantage when they're telling you these things. Learn to read the area for the signs and learn how to use those signs to catch the animal. So great picture illustrating this too. This is an example of mice burrowing actually. And we can see the runs that even mice will make runs where they come out and clean them. And this is outdoors. This was in Texas. And this wasn't a house mouse. In fact, I wasn't able to identify species, but it was a mouse that was running here. And we could see the droppings in here too. So they're also marking their trail with droppings. So as Claudia said, they're going to use pheromones to communicate. And this is what they're doing here. So take some of those droppings, put them inside your bait station. Take some of those droppings and bring them to another site with you and put them in a station at another site. This will get the animals to interact with it quicker, because if you do it at the site you're at first, they're going to go, this smells familiar. I've gone in this place. Maybe I should investigate again. Maybe I should remark this area. And if you use it in a spot where it's different rodents, you're going to get a reaction where, oh, who's that? I want to go visit. I want to go see. I want to go mark that. This is my territory. What's someone else doing marking my land? I'm going to go mark their land too. So, it's called seeding, the technique where you take droppings from one area and use them to get the rodents to interact with you quicker in a different area. So rub marks, we discussed this a lot too. It's from that oil, that sebum that they secrete, that all mammals put out. It is a great sign and a great indicator. I mentioned earlier about getting up and drop ceilings and looking at the pipes for dust. We also look for rub marks on those pipes. And when you see a rub mark on a pipe like this, when you know the animal is traveling this path every day or every night, why don't you zip tie a bait station to it? Why don't you zip tie a trap to it? Well, why don't we take an extra couple of minutes to look around and go, why are they traveling this way? Is there a water source that we can eliminate? Is there a food source that we can eliminate? Is there an entry point that we can eliminate? We need to read these signs and let them teach us how to do our jobs better. So I like to do this trick with rub marks. If any of you have been on a tour with me, I'll do this trick on a tour where it's so easy. You get down there and you take a key or a pocket knife, and that rat wax or that sebum can be so thick where these animals travel daily that you can carve your initials or your name into it, and then come back the next day and see if it's still there or not. That'll tell you if they're still using that path actively or not, because if it's still an active path, they'll put out enough sebum in a day or two to cover up what you carved in there. And I love the picture at the bottom because it shows just how oily and nasty they really are when you get a close-up view of them. So great pictures. Look at these rub marks. These are wonderful. We can see how these animals are approaching. We know where they're coming down at. They're telling us where to put our devices at. And also, it just goes to show what amazing climbers they are. Because think about having to climb up, and this is in a gymnasium, these photos. So they were climbing up to the top into the ceiling where they were nesting and having to come down every night to eat and drink after the kids left. And if anyone's worked in a school with a gym, they know kids leave food under gyms. It's amazing how much food ends up underneath the gym versus inside the children. It's as if they throw away more than they eat. But these are spots to look at, and these rub marks show us that. And it made it so easy to know where to put our traps at. So learn to look for these. Urine stains are a great sign. Get yourself a UV flashlight, and it does take a lot of practice. But if you have a high quality UV flashlight and you learn to know what you're doing, you can track them with their urine. And this picture is just perfect because let's pay attention. We're keen observers, right? If anyone's been doing this job long enough, you almost recognize that shape on the edge there. That's the shape of a bait station. So the technician put the station against the wall because to his defense, all the textbooks had said at the time, we put bait stations against walls. They have to go against the wall. Well, the rats didn't read this. They didn't read the textbooks. They went, we're not going in that bait station. We're going to walk around it every night to the point where we left a urine trail all the way around this where the bait station was. And they never went in the station. All the technician had to do was move the station over 4 inches to where the hole is and where the urine stain is. And the rats probably would have walked right in at that point because it was already just pre-marked with their urine. So learn to use this to your advantage. Learn to recognize these signs. And one of our other rodent signs, live and dead rodents. We know they're active if you're seeing them alive. If you're finding them dead, they're like Lay's potato chips. If you find one, there's probably more around. It's really hard to have just one. So if you find a dead rodent, the odds are there's probably another one nearby, be it dead or alive. And with that, we're going to move to our summary.
All right, thank you, Timmy. So, I mean, this is pretty straightforward, right? But obviously you've seen that mice and rats, rodents in general, are incredibly complex, right? So having this information, now you're probably going to think a little bit differently about that run, that rub mark, where they're maybe traveling, what those droppings really mean. So, and again, when it comes to rodent control, we must think about what is in and around where we live, our businesses, all the food, water, harborage that we're providing. And so it's very important that we address those issues. And again, I'm going to just reiterate one more time here, is that the first step in rodent management is to understand their biology and habits. So we are creating a variety of educational materials. So you can see this is one of those examples. And it's important, right, that your city or your municipality or region, whatever it is, has some documents that you can at least help inform your constituents. If you have really great content that you would like to share, it's important. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with our Gulf South Vector project. But if there are needs that you have, it's important to go through maybe what's already existing and then let us know, and we might be able to help you in that through the Gulf South Vector. We already talked about this, but look, you must really look at the water, the harborage, and the food. And we're going to be talking about this in the future webinars. And this is what I was talking about. You can actually go to @NOLA We really try to focus a lot on different rodent content. Sometimes it's just a myth, right? It might be mothballs and then of course you can see there's the elf, right? And so we try to make it fun. And during the holidays, we include some different topics, but you can see here, feeding birds, feeding wildlife, those are all pretty common across whatever jurisdiction you may be in. We are going to be having a variety of other actually, there's 3 more webinars, and we're really going to be getting into a lot of different topics. And if you would like to really, dive in for 2 intense days of rodent biology field experience, we have a Rodent Academy. It's going to be June 24th and 25th here in New Orleans. You can see the QR code down there. It's in collaboration with our Greater New Orleans Pest Control Association. And again, we cover a lot of different topics. So if you'd like more information, please be sure to reach out or grab that QR code. Follow us at NOLA Mosquito. That's going to be posted there as well. And I believe we have one more slide. I'm going to go to this and we'll go back. We have a project called the Vector Educational Centers for Training, Outreach, and Resources. This is a CDC funded project. We're at the end of year 2. We have trained over 32,000 people, professionals actually, from Texas, from South Texas, McAllen, Texas, all the way to Miami, from Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Texas, but there's a lot of folks from other parts of the country and international as well. I would really recommend that you sign up to get information because it's more than just rodents. We do lots of other different types of training that's there. The website will also inform you a little bit more about what is there. So real quick, and then we'll answer a couple of questions here. We do really appreciate you coming here. Many of these videos are on the YouTube channel for the City of New Orleans Mosquito and Termite Control Board, but also the Gulf South Vector has their own YouTube with really focusing more on vector-borne disease and vector-borne vector control. And I think that's kind of where we are. So Stacy, are there any questions that are in the chat for Timmy and I?
There aren't any questions in the chat.
Nice.
All right, so no questions there. So we really appreciate everybody's time today. I know it's been almost an hour and a half, so we really appreciate it again, and we look forward to seeing you on some of our future webinars. If there's any webinars that you're interested in and would like us to have, please make sure education@nola.gov. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.